She gonna open your gift? You didn't know.
Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer Story is here, and it's causing a big splash. This Netflix release seemed to show up unannounced, and viewers are divided on their opinions of the show. What was director Ryan Murphy's one rule when approaching this kind of a story? And how did Evan Peters even begin preparing for such a dark role? Stick around to find out.
The Jeffrey Dahmer story is so much bigger than just him.
Number 1. Dahmer actor Evan Peters said,
Sort of started with a blank slate with Dahmer.
Peters only had a few images in mind before he began his journey into filming this story, which might be why it took some time before he agreed to play the title role. To help Evans prepare, and maybe even to convince him to sign on to the project, director Ryan Murphy sent Evan the script with some other materials to help him learn more about Dahmer. Evans said,
But in order to do that, I was going to have to go to really dark places and stay there for an extended period of time.
Number 2. Right into the deep end. After looking carefully through the background materials sent to him by director Ryan Murphy, Evan Peters probably felt a strange kind of inspiration. This is the kind of sensitive storytelling that he'd want to get just right. And doing that meant learning about the details of what Dahmer did and trying to understand the motivation behind the killer's decisions. This is a grim task that would definitely have a psychological toll on even the most seasoned of actors. Peters said,
Commit to that was absolutely going to be one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life.
Number 3. Just one. It can be useful to have a mission statement, and this seemed to prove true once again on the set of Dahmer, with director Ryan Murphy's one rule for the production. In a Netflix interview, actor Evan Peters talks about how the director wanted to approach this sensitive story.
We had one rule going into this from Ryan, that it would never be told from Dahmer's point of view.
This lines up with a subtle focus on all the other characters portrayed in the show. You might notice that the stories with the most detail are those of the people Dahmer affected, rather than Dahmer himself. Peters also says that,
as an audience, you're not really sympathizing with him, you're not really getting into his plight, you're more sort of watching it.
Number 4. You might notice it first on the Netflix thumbnail. In a chilling visual, Evan Peters wore yellow contacts for the role. While we might be accustomed to alarming choices like this on screen, we're surprised to learn through the character's on-screen explanation that Dahmer had a real-life fascination with yellow eyes. In the second episode, when Dahmer anticipates Konarak in his apartment, the victim wakes up in Dahmer's lap. To everyone's surprise, Dahmer is wearing yellow contacts. He explains that they're like the Emperor's in Star Wars Episode 4, Return of the Jedi. Number 5. It seems the making of this show wasn't just for entertainment. It might also have been for telling the stories of all those people affected by Dahmer and his acts. This seems to have been director Ryan Murphy's approach, and we can hear hints of it through the actors involved in the production. Actor Richard Jenkins, who plays Dahmer's father, said this about director Ryan Murphy's approach to the work. Ryan used to be a journalist, and it's really thorough. An investigation not just of Dahmer, but the damage that he caused to the victims and their families, and to his parents. Number 6. It wasn't super cheery. In one of a few videos from on set, we see a near expressionless Evan Peters in his Dahmer costume and hair, leaving them all with a camera rolling in front of him. The moment feels plain and bleak. Was this the feeling on set all the time? We hope not. There is some hope, though. Actor Penelope Miller played Dahmer's mother on the show, and was one of the few to post some photos from the set on her socials. Penelope described working with actor Evan Peters in her post. I beyond loved working with him, and even though Jeffrey and Joyce Dahmer had a strained and estranged relationship in the true story, we secretly wished we had more to do together. He is a consummate actor, and I adore him. So it can't have been all bad.
You haven't had a nice word for me in years. You're always in your room. You don't want a mother. You don't want me.
Number 7. This one's for you, Glenda. Actor Niecy Nash talks about how they decided to dedicate a part of the show to the character of Glenda Cleveland, one of the surviving victims. Glenda did a lot in real life, but not many people who are aware of the story know that much about her. Niecy discovered while working on Dahmer that Glenda regularly reported Dahmer to the police in real life, and no one really heeded her warnings. Niecy expressed,
a very pivotal moment, and see the family of this baby she tried to help.
She wonders if it all could have been prevented if the police had listened to Glenda. At least in this show, her work actually got recognized. Number 8. How do you get into the state of mind to play someone like Jeffrey Dahmer on film? If you ask the actor Evan Peters, he might say research.
And then proceeded to read biographies.
Peters seems to have delved deep into the behavior of this character, saying, Dahmer is interesting in that he is almost regretful and has guilt and sort of confusion about what went on. He doesn't really have a charming, mischievous smile. He's docile, sort of aloof,
and almost disassociated from what he did.
Peters adds that during his research, he found the way that Dahmer spoke was very candid and very normal. Again, it was so jaw-dropping that it all really happened. Number 9. Before signing on to the project, Peters was sent the scripts by director Ryan Murphy. Murphy also sent him recommendations to learn more about the story, and even some things that might have convinced Peters to care more deeply about why this story was worth telling. Peters said that, it's called the Jeffrey Dahmer Story, but it's not just him and his backstory. It's the repercussions.
This is how society and our system failed to stop him multiple times.
Number 10. This show needed it. We can only imagine the undertaking of such a role would be a daunting task, and it seems that Evan Peters had a team to help him through it. Peters describes working closely with some crew members who went above and beyond their production roles to help him maintain his mental health. I have to say that the crew was instrumental in keeping me on the guardrails.
I cannot thank them enough, and I could not have done any of this role without them.
Specifically Sarah, our focus puller, who was just such a breath of fresh air and light when we were filming some of these horrific scenes. Jason, our DP, who kept reminding me of why we were doing it. Number 11. Stories as horrifying as these can often leave us wondering why they are worth telling. Dahmer actor Evan Peters had to do some careful consideration around portraying the role, and here's what he came up with. It felt important to be respectful to the victims' families.
To try to tell the story as authentically as we could.
You need to have certain plot points because he did do these things.
But you don't need to embellish them. We get it. We don't need to see it over and over again.
Number 12. The release of the show has seen some content from behind the scenes, and we expect that. What we didn't expect was just how little we've seen of the making of and behind the scenes moments that normally would come with building the hype of a new release. The cast hasn't really spoken too much to the press about the series. Media was not granted access to previews of the show, and there was no premiere either. We wonder if this was a clever but reverent decision by Netflix to both build mystery and intrigue around the show, but also to treat the sensitive topic with a degree of respect.
It is a story about Dahmer, but it's also a story about the victims.
It seems like the show took great care in telling this story, reminding each other daily of the one rule of putting this show on, and why it was a story worth telling. What are your thoughts on the making of the show? Do you think you would have enjoyed a day on set? Why or why not? Let us know in the comments below.